What's your job exactly? Sorry. Oh, very loud. Okay. So, second. I didn't prepare that, but like, okay, you can try. Yeah. Introduction. Okay, so should I start? Okay, so a little bit about me. I got into computer science actually because I like AI and science fiction. So this has been brewing for many, many years. Now AI is all the rage, but when I was studying in university, it was like quite basic. So after many different career paths, I'm finally at a point where I wanted to be talking about AI for people interested in this, hopefully. So what is this going to be about? I'm going to explain you. Okay, wait, let me first make sure that this doesn't happen again. Battery. Lock screen. Never. Okay. So what is this talk about? This talk will tell you what the future of AI looks like. And I think this is interesting for you because as people building products, in order to be successful, you need to know what the market looks like right now. But especially you need to know what the market will look like in the future. And I think that AI will have a big impact on this. People think that AI, especially for programmers, is about coding faster, but it's not only about that. So what's the main point of the talk? The main point of the talk that I want to convey you is this. In the future, the primary users of software won't be human. They will be AI language models. And this has huge implications because software market is huge and it will grow only bigger because AIs will be consuming our software, not only humans. This is the thesis of all this talk. And before getting there, we will do a small recap to see how this might happen. So I've structured more or less how LLM products look right now. This is product, so it's not about research. And these divisions more or less define how people interact with this. Now the boundaries between these three are getting blurry because AI is moving very fast, but I think it's useful to have this kind of division. So we will start by question answering bots. How many of you use ChatGPT daily? Okay. Perplexity maybe? Okay. Claude? Okay, pretty good. So this is well known to everyone. You make a question, you get an answer. Normally this is text, but now it's evolving. There's also some images, but the key aspect is that you make a question and you get a reply. Information in general. The limitations of this is that it's text output. Now it has some images, but in general it's just information. And the big problem is context switching. What do I mean by this? If I'm a programmer, normally I will go to ChatGPT, I will ask a question, I will get some code, I will put it in my editor, and then if there's some problem, copy this code into ChatGPT, and then go back. And this happens a lot. Does this sound familiar to any of you? Okay, so these QA bots have a lot of friction, and this is one of the main problems they have. So let's do an example for this. So if I'm a programmer, I would go here, I would say, can you write a program to retrieve the stars of some random GitHub repositories? Okay. Write a Python program to retrieve the GitHub stars of some random repositories. Okay. So you would get this. I don't know why sometimes it replies in Catalan. It's like, okay, maybe the accent is that strong. I don't know. So you would get some text. Then as a programmer, I would copy this text. I would copy this text into something like an editor here, right? I would save it, and then you would run it. Python demo.py. See, and sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. In this case, there's an authorized error. So what's next? Just as a side note, do you know what RAG is? This is not the main talk, but essentially LLMs don't have a lot of information on up-to-date events. So when you want information on up-to-date events, you have to do what is called retrieval augmented generation, which is just a fancy word for saying, like, give me context. If I ask what is my name, LLMs don't know. If I say context, this is my name, my age, blah, 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 what is my name? Now it knows. And this is what you see currently in the market. This is what is exploding now. Like all the bots that answer your queries about some documentation, all the travel companies that have some AI replying questions, they are doing this. They just have all the documentation and they search this and they reply you. This is the basic technique that they use. Yep.
So RAG is the LLM system realizing that it doesn't have context, or just
no, RAG is like just a fancy word, and it just means including in the prompt the information that the LLM needs to answer.
But in the first one, it realized that it doesn't have the context, right?
Yeah. But so what they are doing, like a travel agency bot, what they do is like, this is the question of the person. This is all the information from our company. Reply.
All right. Understood.
Right?
Thank you.
Okay, so what's next? We said that there was some friction moving from ChatGPT to wherever you are coding or writing. So the next step to fix this is copilots. Copilots essentially are moving ChatGPT into the tool you are using to reduce this friction, right? Because you are moving ChatGPT into your context, it also has some new features. For example, it can look at what you are doing. Like, for example, if I'm coding, it can read the code I am coding instead of having to copy paste, and sometimes you can even apply. So there's some very basic actions, and they have a bit more context. Some very famous ones are Copilot and Cursor. Someone knows this. I think we've been talking about this, yeah. Also Gamma app. So these whole slides are done with Gamma app. I just copied a post I wrote in Medium. I put it in this app, and it wrote the sketch of all the slides. Then I obviously modified, but yeah. The limitation of this is that this single application. If I'm programming, then this ChatGPT will know about my code. For example, for this presentation, I wanted to include some code, and I wanted to include information from my article. But the one doing the slides is not the one doing code, so they cannot do. What I would like is like have a single one that can read my code and read my article and generate the slides. So let's see an example of this. So we did this demo, and we saw that we had an error, right? So this is Cursor. What would I do here? I would say, have a look at this code. I'm getting an unauthorized error. Retrieve only public repositories. Okay, Catalan again. There's an error in this code. Unauthorized, just retrieve public repositories. Okay, we will go with Catalan. It's correct. It's doing the same in English. So see, now I do not need to copy the code. It already knows I'm talking about this code. And I can reference other files in the code using an @ sign. Moreover, I can do apply, and I will see nicely what is changing. See, the problem is that it was trying to access some private repositories, but there's no authorization. That was where it's failing. Now I can just do accept. And if I run again, see, now I see some repositories random. Do you know what GitHub is? Does people know what GitHub is? Okay. Well, GitHub is just the Google Drive for coders. It's where we share code. So this is like how popular different software is. Okay, so we see here some small actions. It has some context, so it's getting better. What would be the next step on this? So the next step is, now we have copilots where we have ChatGPT inside our context, inside one tool. But what I would like to have is just one single ChatGPT, one single LLM that talks to all my tools, right? I don't want to need to change context, and the example was, for example, the slides, no? Do you know Zapier? Does anyone know Zapier? Okay. Essentially, for those of you who don't know, it's just a workflow automation where you have different boxes and you can program what happens. If you have someone registering your website, assign it to a sales representative. These rules are very basic. It's programming, so they have to be very clearly defined. But Zapier, for example, is in a very, very good position to now use LLMs and say like, okay, we have all these boxes, so now you can connect them whatever you want, right? So you are automating different workflows. It's not only now Zapier manages all these tools for you, so you have a single entry point. Customer service bots, for example, the one I was mentioning, kind of start to do this because you can talk to them, and then, for example, they can say, oh, I'm going to refund your trip, or I'm going to call someone else, or I'm going to dispatch you. So they are already a single point of entry to dealing with the company. And this is only going to get better. So I think we can do questions later, but so far, the recap. Question answering bots, you give information, you receive information in ChatGPT, for example. A lot of context switching, and the interaction are mainly text. Copilots, you don't need to move away from the tool you are using, so there's less friction. There are some small actions, but it's still limited to doing one single thing. In workflow automation, you have more integration, so you have a single point of entry, and you can use many tools. So what's next? The next step is like going from text to action. Actually, many of the things, for example, the example I showed, give me the stars of some GitHub repositories. I don't want to write code. What I want is to know the information, right? So I would like the LLM to do things for me, not tell me how to do things, right? And this is the thesis of this part. Before that, like, what are actions? In software, actions are text commands, right? When you want to do anything in software, you write a program to do it for you. Code is essentially text. When you are writing a program, it has some inputs and it has some outputs. All of this is text. And LLMs are very good at generating text. LLMs now are all the rage because they can understand natural language, right? And there was no, software could not do this before now. But understanding natural language means that they are very good also at the structured text, like programming, right? So we can leverage LLMs not only to understand our human language, but also to generate code, which you have already been seeing. Moreover, when you think about the web is essentially actions over the internet. So how are actions over the internet text-based? The internet, HTTP, do you people know what HTTP is? Okay, for those of you who don't know, essentially when you are browsing the internet, what's happening is HTTP. For example, when I'm going into Twitter or X, this is what actually happens under the hood. You send a message that says like, go to this website, specifically to this path, which is my profile, and you have this text that says like, I want HTML, which stands for a normal web page. If you do this, obviously, you will get a website. But if you do it in the command line, for example, you see, curl means get this web page for me, and you see that the output is text and is HTML. So this is the equivalent of the Twitter that you see. Okay? The advantage of this, the point I'm trying to make here, is that it's very easy for LLMs to talk to the internet because everything is just about text. So what's next? APIs. When you use Twitter, for example, you use a user interface. You click buttons, you do stuff. This is what humans do. But when you want to automate this, you don't want software to be clicking buttons. You want software to just do stuff. Each server, like for example, Twitter, have different actions that can be done, like post a message, read a message. These actions are defined in what is called an API, Application Programming Interface. This only tells you, I am Twitter, and this is the things you can do with me. So for example, if I want to automate sending messages, I could just use this API to send messages in Twitter. And this is, again, just text. See, for example, this is a description of one of our endpoints. It says, if you go to this path, I'm going to give you a list of gateways, and the responses you will have is this. In JSON, which is not HTML, it's a different format, but it's a definition that you can use to make these calls. Like to make it more concrete, you see this is gateway search. So for us in FuseAd, we have this gateway search, and this is the information it returns. You can see that each of these gateways, it doesn't matter what it is, it's described in these instructions. These instructions tell you I'm this server and you can do all of these things. Okay? So, how do we connect all these dots? LLMs can understand user requests. As I did in the demo previously, I asked, hey, I want you to retrieve the stars of GitHub. The LLM itself wrote the Python code, and then I just executed this Python code to get the result. What it was doing is a HTTP call. This thing that happened here, request.get, this is actually making a request through this API. Okay? So LLMs can interact with software like, say, GitHub, say, Twitter, say, Gmail, without having to use the user interface. This is a very powerful idea, and when we were discussing about this with Jordi in February, there was no one doing this. So we did this proof of concept that is called Talk to APIs, and essentially this combines the application programming interface with the power of LLMs generating code. I don't want to go into too much detail with this, but essentially the same request I did, like, can you give me a list of public repositories? This will go to the LLM, this will generate Python code, and then you can click run code and get a reply. The key aspect here is that this dropdown, okay, not today, we broke that. Anyway, here in this dropdown, you have the OpenAPI specification of each service. So I don't need to know which service I will use. I can just put the documentation and the LLM will be able to use it on the fly. The problem with Zapier was that the boxes that Zapier has were predefined. If Zapier allows me to integrate with, let's say, a Slack, then if I want to use another service and it's not available there, I cannot do it. They need to write this code beforehand. Instead, here you can just drop the documentation and the LLM will know what to do. So, for example, here if you need API keys, you will have to add them. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This was like for GitHub, you can put your token here. This was a very early prototype, and this was not a product, so definitely you have to deal with authentication. Some of them use tokens, some of them use other things, but there's some things to iron out. But it was just a first prototype to convey these capabilities, let's say. Without going into much details, this is more or less what's happening, which is you load the text description. This is the OpenAPI text we were describing. Has any one of you used Python to call an LLM? Okay. So when you want to use ChatGPT without using ChatGPT, it looks like something like this. OpenAI, chat, and then you say, hey, you are a Python programmer generating Python code. This is to tell the LLM what it's supposed to do. And here in the user request, you would put like, I want to see the stars of GitHub repository. Following the rack idea we said before, you load the API specification, and then you pass it here. So the LLM gets, what the LLM receives is like, this is the documentation of GitHub. I want you to get the stars. So it will just check the documentation and write the Python code to retrieve that. Once you get the code, then you execute the code and return it. The code, the result that you are returning is the code. So then you have to actually execute it and get the result. This is a bit convoluted because what consumers want is like only this. We did this so people can see the code, but people who are not programmers do not need to see this. The key aspect is that this works for people that don't know how to program. And this is the interesting aspect. So, features now, what do I mean with this? There's a lot of people when they see demos that maybe fail, they say like, oh, this is doing okay, but it's not great. the field is moving very, very fast. When we did this in February, it was not working great, the Python code was failing often. Less than 7 months later, it's working much, much better, right? For example, in terms of cost from a market point of view, it went down almost 240 times cheaper. I don't know why it keeps disconnecting. Okay. Right, without doing anything, the price of LLMs has gone down dramatically, from almost $200 per million tokens to 0.75. We were paying for talk to APIs for each time we run this, it was like 40 cents, 50 cents, not too much, but now it's less than 5, right? It depends also on which model you use, but it's going down very, very fast. And at the same time, it's going up very fast in performance. This is one of many, many tests about math. So you use an LLM to answer math questions. And in 2019, it was like 30%, which means pretty bad, failing the exam. And now this is not up to date because it's perfect already. All the models are already perfect. They have to create new tests because LLMs are getting too intelligent, too fast, let's say. At the same time, they are getting faster. I don't have a picture, but actually, there's something called Cerebras. This is the fastest ChatGPT in the internet, let's say. Okay, so for a demo, let's see. Write a very long story about people creating a new company at Wolf Accelerator. Make it very, very long. Okay, again in Catalan, no idea. But see how fast this is, you cannot even see it. Make it much, much longer and add random pieces of code. So, like you don't even have time to scroll, right? Like this is extremely fast and things are only gonna get better. So as developers or people building products, how do we leverage these improvements? So essentially, this is everything you have to do, right? We just say like, instead of using the old model, use a new model. And essentially your code gets much cheaper, much better, and much more clever with you doing almost nothing. I think it's the first time in history that software gets better without you doing anything instead of depreciating because there's new libraries or new problems, right? So this is, the key point here is like, if you try any LLM product or you try to do some demo and it doesn't work great, but it kind of does the job, you can assume that in 6 months it's probably going to do the job, or 1 year. So, because I've seen a lot of people say like, this demo, it's good, you know, but it failed. It's like, yes, but in 6 months it's not gonna fail, right? Maybe 1 year. But if you try something and it's not perfect, do not give up. Just use the best model and wait for it, and the next model probably will solve it already. So now the interesting state of the art. We have seen some actions in Talk to APIs, but now you are going to see what is a thoroughly, like an agent that can do many things, let's say. So for those of you that don't know Replit, Replit essentially is an editor, like this one I was showing here, but at the same time it also has, okay, it also have an environment where you can run things. So it's both an editor and both you can deploy and you can have a database. So what can you do here? You can say, write a Python program that retrieves some GitHub repositories and shows them nicely in a website. Okay? So this is the step where people that don't program don't need to program anymore. You write what you want, and then Replication will think, okay, let's see, what can I do for you? Again, this is not going to be extremely fast, but this is going to only getting faster and better. What it's going to do first, it's going to see what it can do with your request, and it will propose some plan to implement this, right? It will say like, I will create this program that creates, oh, so GitHub, no. So it's GitHub repositories. The rest looks good. It also will tell you like, I can do some extra things. But for now, I think in general it's better not to make it too complex to start, and then you can ask more features. Okay? Yeah. So Now what you do as a developer or as a non-developer, you click, sit, and watch. And then essentially it will build the whole thing for you. It is pretty fast. It will also install the dependencies. See, when I'm coding, maybe it's because I'm getting close to the screen. Okay, perfect. So it will install the dependencies. When I'm using an editor, it doesn't install anything. It tells me it edits code, but if I need a dependency, I just want you to install it and just to run it. I don't want to have to do all the things related to this. It will tell you here what it's saying, like I'm creating the HTML, I'm writing the JS, I'm installing these dependencies, I'm checking potential issues, and at some point it will say like, okay, I finished, and I will show you how it looked like. I'm going to take the chance to have a sip of water. So now this is starting the server, and now it's going to show you how it looks like. See? So this is essentially a web page, right? If you click, it will lead you to some repositories. And the cool thing is that this being Replit, this is already a website that you can share with people. So any of you non-developers, you can just write what you want, it will create this, and you can right away share this because it's already in the internet. You can build apps right away. Any question about this?
Test, yes. Are you actually using Replit productively for your product?
Yep.
How much faster are you shipping features compared to before? Or did you see that your burn rate in story points got way faster? Or
so we don't use Replit only. We use also some editors because the problem with LLMs is that some of them have strengths in something and some strengths in the other. For example, the best one writing code or prose like Post is like Anthropic instead of OpenAI. So for that I use one, for code I use another, and Replit has it has its own place, let's say, right?
But are you using it?
I am using it,
okay.
And actually, let me show. I can show you a next demo. So this is newest demo. Some of you have already seen it, but this was built last 3 days or 4, and essentially it's a ChatGPT clone. So for example, all this interface, it's built by Replit. I tell it, I want an interface that looks like ChatGPT, just build it. And I did write 0 lines of code for the UI. Here what we have is an agent, ChatGPT, on the behind the scenes that has a wallet with some money. Okay? Normally ChatGPT does not have access to websites. So if I ask, when is Wolf's Pack 6 application deadline? Okay, great. It will say, I don't know, right? So what I can do here is use tools. This is what talk to APIs. This is the goal of talk to APIs, to be able to tell the LLM, look, here you have a tool that you don't know anything about before, and now you have some new feature. If you open this URL, this is a special URI, but it actually contains this information. As we were discussing before, this is just an API endpoint, and what the LLM will get is this information. I will say like, okay, if I want to get the information of a URL, I can use this endpoint, and I just have to send the URL in the body. All of it is text. So what happens now is that the AI says like, hey, I can scratch tools, scrape tools. So you say, oh wait. Scrape wolfnyc.com/schedule website and tell me the application deadline. Okay. I don't know what's wrong with Catalan today. Scrape wolfny.com schedule and tell me the application deadline. Now it's going to be able to scrape this, hopefully. So July 2024, okay? We showed this demo to Dan that was here soon and some days ago, and it was not very impressive, so he suggested, why don't you add something to send an SMS to people? So the way to do this was done with Replit. What did I do? Like, I went to Replit and I want you to build a server with a single endpoint that will send an SMS to the number that is provided. This is this tool. See, the LLM sees send this message to the provided phone number, send the parameters like phone number and message. And this I built with Replit. I literally wrote no code. Replit built the whole server and also has some nice features that it tells you, like, I need the Twilio API key, put it here. So this is amazing. Like, it's a very good way for Replit to provide value because I can just create single endpoints. I put it behind one of my paywalls, so now we can charge money for using some tools, and this is definitely something that would be much slower without Replit, because with Replit, it creates everything, but at the same time, it already deploys it. So it's already running in the internet. You don't need to worry about hosting it. You don't need to worry about deploying it, databases, nothing. I could do this myself, yes. I could create a new server, upload the code there, synchronize it, but it's definitely much, much faster and much nicer.
And is this production ready? Would you ship this to users?
So this, no.
No, okay.
Because this is just like this is not a product, this is a research effort, let's say. This is showing us what the agents can do, because we believe that this is what the future looks like. We are now adding tools manually, but when LLMs can read any tool and pay for any tool, then you are not going to be required to see it at all.
But how long does it take you from the 10 minutes Replit prototype you created to getting to production ready?
So,
compared to before Replit.
So this agent is a research thing, but these tools are production ready. I would definitely ship this production ready.
Okay, so you basically really say, Replit do this, and then whatever it spits out, you say that's production ready.
Okay, so no, because these are small tools. So it's if you look at the code, it's very easy code. I will definitely review the code. It's not like I will ship blindly things to production at all. But you can go here and you see that the code is very short, like just this code. There's some comments, so it's a very, very short code. And I would definitely have a look, test for security, right? So it does not remove all the work that you have to do as an engineer, but it really alleviates it a lot. And eventually, as it gets better, I will trust it more and more. I will not do that right away because it still makes mistakes, it still has some problems. Now, for example, I think with this SMS, there's some problem. If you send some characters, it gets confused. So there's definitely work to do. But in 1 year, I would be surprised if something like SMS is not production ready right away.
Okay, to my initial question, how much faster are you now from 0 to being production ready? Twice as fast, 5 times as fast, 100 times as fast?
So define production ready, because an MVP...
You ship it to your customers.
Yeah, easily when we started working with Paul to now, 10 times X, like 10 times faster. Like we ask for something, go to get coffee here, I come back and he's like, it's done.
Okay, 10x, that's a number. Okay.
I mean, I think that one of the greatest advantages that is kind of hidden in this development is like people focus a lot on the code, but what it's doing is like it's very fast at telling you what the documentation of some API is or what library is. So normally I say like, I know what is Twilio to send SMS. I can build this code myself. But the great advantage is not that it can write it. It's like I don't need to check. It will write all the structure and then I can fine tune what problem is there.
How easy is it to integrate existing projects?
To integrate with what?
To integrate an existing project. I mean, I have a quite big project. Would you say if I upload it to Replit now, I would also be 10 times faster?
So no, definitely not. Replit has two aspects, let's say. One of them is this Replit agent, which is, it was launched, I don't know, 2 months ago, something like that. So it's still very beta, very early days. and it works best when it can start from scratch and specifically with some kind of tools. So it's not a general purpose agent, let's say. For big projects, what I definitely do is Cursor, because the advantage of Cursor is like, let's see if I don't, if I use something like the hub, one of the advantages of LLMs and Cursor is that you can tell it can read your code base. So the productivity in big code bases is not only about writing code faster, but understanding code faster. So you can say like, is there any endpoint related to paging in this repository? Okay. And you can tell it chat with the code base, not only with the, and it will tell you, hey, I checked your code base and you have these endpoints and you have these things. So the great advantage in big code base is that it explains you what is happening very fast.
Yeah. How much faster are you with Cursor compared to, let's say, VI or whatever you used before?
I don't think I can even compare them. We had specifically this extension, well, one of these was built by a friend of mine, and it's using Django, like a technology I have used in the past, but I didn't use for quite a while. And I needed to add a new endpoint, and I just wrote, hey, I want to add a new endpoint to this repository. I didn't even open a single file, and it showed which files I had to open and which endpoints. You check, okay, it looks good, and then it's done. Like just the time, like I would say 80% of the time, 90% of the time you are reading code, not writing code. So that is the huge amount of time that you can really get down to zero, or not to zero, but very, very lower, much lower. Yeah.
Also, it's not only about speeding it up, it's about from 0 to 1. Like, for example, I've never wrote Chrome extension. In one day, you have one working.
Yeah.
I've never done a web app. In one day, you have a web app working.
Yeah.
I don't know Rust. In one day, I have Rust working. You need to know about programming, but things that would take you a while to say, like, okay, in C++, how do you know, like, resource initialization? It tells me how to do it. And I say, okay, yeah, I know how to do it now.
The 0 to 1 part is usually the one I care the least about, because that's, I don't know, maybe.
I cannot hear you. Can you use the micro?
It's just the 0 to 1 part is usually the part I care the least about as a coder, because that's, I don't know, 2% of my work.
Okay.
So I'm more interested what are you doing with existing projects, but I mean that it helps you to understand code better, which other people wrote is a big advantage. I see it, yeah.
Yeah, like normally if I have to use a new code base, I download it using Git, and then I will ask, hey, can you summarize a bit this code base? What is happening here? Or if you are very good, if you write your own code base and you are consistent in your patterns, what I do is like, look, I have this endpoint where you can retrieve the user data from the database, and I will specifically point to some files, because here you can say things like, you can use @, and here you can put a specific files, like saying, look, have a look at this specifically thing. So I will point to a UI, the controller, and then the database. I will say, like, looking at how I do things, do this other feature. And then it will be much faster to create new features based on what you already did.
Okay, and it follows your code style then?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, so just to finish the demo, we can send the SMS actually, send the application deadline to okay, internet connection. Because I changed this. So the SMS service we pay, the agent has a wallet. This wallet is a Lightning wallet. I close this, yeah. My bad. So that's a good question. We used Twilio the first demo. It's extremely hard to get them to approve to send messages to United States people. So now we are using which one? Another one? Sorry, can you get the microphone? Yeah, sorry.
So how do you pay Twilio, or the Twilio equivalent? Because Twilio doesn't have a Lightning wallet.
Okay.
I understand you're sending Lightning, so you're paying somebody with Lightning. Presumably, you're paying yourself to another Lightning wallet.
Exactly.
But somebody needs to convert it to fiat to pay Twilio.
Exactly.
And we'll have to do so in the meantime until companies like Twilio integrate Lightning.
So there are a few moving pieces here. First of all, there's a service that is called Pay with Hub. This is our service. We charge customers using credit card. We charge a minimum amount of $20 because otherwise it doesn't make sense, and customers have a balance, right? So here I have my wallet and I have 19 euros to spend.
And Pay with Hub is by Fusats?
Yeah. And then the second piece is like now users have a wallet that can pay for Lightning with a balance that is added in fiat. But then,
Can I also top up the balance with Lightning?
no, not yet.
Uh-huh.
For now, because if you have Lightning, we assume that you can pay the Lightning invoice with a QR, but this is clearly a feature that you could add here, yeah. It was like this was the first, the minimal setup that we needed for people without Bitcoin to be able to pay. And then what you do is like Replit, for example, or whatever your tool is, will have an endpoint, and that endpoint is not a paid endpoint. So the second piece here is the Fusats platform where you can add a gateway. See? So what is happening here, this is how the tool for sending SMS is defined. It says you will hit the top URL, which you can see it's Replit, and there's some description and some price. So now you can share this URL here, and this is essentially what you will copy to the agent. So we are paywalling the server of someone else. In this case, everything is us, but the idea is that people would deploy their own tools, and then you can put your gateway in the middle, so we can charge for your tool and pay you some part of that tool. Does that answer the question? Okay. So let's see, last chance for the demo. So we are saying scrape this, say send it to this number and use these tools. Let's do it all in one go. Feel risky today. Okay. Let's see. So now ideally what is going to happen is it's going to scrape this website and it's going to send it to my number. We'll see. Some of you have already seen this demo working, so hopefully you will believe it. Okay, so it sent the SMS. So what is the application? Oh, well, it says already here, sorry, yeah. We can check. So yeah, definitely. Okay, so that's the end of the demo. And like just to sum up a bit, like LLMs are going to be the primary interface, which will be, they are going to be the primary interface to interact with software. Just today I was trying to put volume in my phone. I was like, I don't want to go to settings, click something. I just want to tell the phone like, hey, I want SMS messages to sound, and I would like to be able to tell the phone to do that. I don't want to be able to have to do it myself, or go to ChatGPT or Perplexity. How can I turn on the volume for SMS messages in my phone, right? Another key point I think is that the software will probably shift to our being more LLM friendly. Normally API documentations have colors and things that you can copy and cool stuff, but then to copy this text into LLM, this is much harder. So I don't want fancy UIs. I want plain text that I can copy to the LLM because I'm not going to be the one consuming it. And I think that this trend will affect software in a lot of ways. And yeah, we already discussed about this. Yeah, so these things look cool now, but it's only gonna get better. So I definitely think that it's going to change how things work, and the market it's really be affected by this. At least that's our thesis and our prediction for our company to grow. We are hoping that. So that's it. Any questions? Or you can clap also if you want. No questions? Perfect. And by the way, some of you told me that you want to try Cursor or you had some advice, so this was like not very hands-on. If any of you want advice on how to really use Cursor, just let me know, because there's a lot of things. But I really encourage you to try things, because it moves so fast that when you are reading a guide or a manual, it's probably outdated by a huge margin. And I think that there's many ways of doing the same thing, and it's up to you to find the one that suits you best. Even in Cursor, I've seen people using it very differently from me, and for them it works very good, and for me their way of thinking stuff is not great. So I think that if you want to stay on top of AI in general, the best way by far is to try the tools. Like, because I tried... Say again? Say again? The VS Code is like Cursor is like VS Code. It's based on VS Code. But like even ChatGPT or Claude, Grok in Twitter or Perplexity, the best way to stay on top is to try it out. And try it out, considering that when it fails or it's not too satisfactory, maybe it's because you have to adapt to how it actually works. Because even me, the first time I tried ChatGPT, was like, oh, cool, it can answer some questions. And then I told my wife, and my wife is like, oh, I'm using this to teach, it's amazing, right? Like even this slide program that I use, for me, it's okay-ish, not too great, but she teaches English and Chinese, so she can just translate the whole slide deck with one button, like translate this to Chinese, and it's done. And it's 15 euros a month, but the amount of time she saves, it's crazy, right? So there's a lot of tools that are under the radar because ChatGPT is all the rage. But yeah, there's a lot of tools that I encourage you to have a look. Gamma.app.